I've known Frank for a long time. He's given me a bad time a number of times, and so Frank, come on up. I want to congratulate you. And I think we have a little gift for you here. If I can see it walking up this way someplace. Stacy, I saw you a minute ago. Anyway, we do have a gift for Frank. Here we go. Okay, can you hear me away in the back? You can. Okay, very good. Well, Frank is a big pheasant hunter. He also hunts geese and ducks once in a while, mostly pheasants. And so I was going to bring a shotgun in here to represent what we're doing, but with current regulations, that's not allowed. So all I have is a case, an empty case, but inside of it there's a gift certificate for Frank to go to the gun shop and pick out his shotgun. So, I'd like to say a few words, Frank, but you have a bad time of not stopping, so
I like to walk around with the mic, and it's dangerous to give me a mic, I'll tell you that. I want to thank all of the employees that supported all of my efforts around Daktronics over the last 34 years. And I'd like to introduce a couple of people right now. My wife Jean, right here in front. I'll tell you, without her, I wouldn't have had such a pleasant life. So it's been very, very important that she gets some recognition. My family, my son was supposed to be here, but he's always late, so he's not here yet. But at any rate, got a brother sitting back in the crowd, Dwayne, and my sister right across the aisle, Eva. So we got some family that showed up, and there's a few people. Is Jenny Erickson here? Oh, Jenny was my right-hand person when I first came here, and she kind of brought me along. I was hoping she would show up. Sue Amjal. Sue is a long-time friend and has done a great job of keeping me in line over the years. Anyway, a few people that really were special for me, and I can't help but thank my brother Al here. That was a welcome day, July 26, 1979, when he called me. I was down in Iowa City, and I really appreciate that phone call because it led to a lot of good things for me. Jim Morgan has been very helpful in guiding me along the way, and I appreciate that. And all of the sales force that we recruited over the years, some retired. There's Gary, some are still with us, most of them are still with us, but at any rate, it's been just a dream to work with the people. I had a lot of people ask me, how do you build a sales force? We go out and recruit a bunch of people and then turn them loose, and they become very successful if you give them some free rein once in a while, and sometimes it's a little bit dangerous, but you got to give them free rein. At any rate, thank you very much. I'm going to make it short. I could hang on to this mic for hours, but I'll cut it off right now, and I'll get a chance to talk to some of you people later on this evening.
Thank you, Craig. Next is Jim Morgan. Jim is stepping down as our Chief Executive Officer here at the end of this month. He's only been with us for 44 years. I mean, 44 years. Jim and I have been a great team in building the company. He was always kind of Mr. Inside, and I was kind of Mr. Outside, and we really did really work together. And so, Jim, we have a present for you as well. If you want to step up here. I know that you enjoy biking and that you hang out at the bike shop once in a while. So we also have a certificate for you there for $1,000 to pick out the bike that you choose. This just happens to be one that we're showing here today. So I'll let you say.
With that, I can put a motor on it too. Well, thanks, Al. Yeah, I like to bike. My wife and I like biking. In fact, people ask me what am I doing in retirement. I said the only thing we got figured out so far, we're going to the Black Hills over Labor Day weekend, and I'm not going to be back on Tuesday. I'm going to bike out there. So, I just like to extend some thank yous here. First of all, thank Al and Dwayne for inviting me along for the ride on Daktronics. It's been a heck of a ride, and we've I think achieved things neither of us imagined at the outset. Things played out very well for us, so I'm thankful for that. Thanks to the employees that have helped us build the company. Excuse me. Some of the early employees that signed on back when Daktronics was more of still a dream than a reality. Vern Volsky's here, our first mechanical engineer. Ed Wettinger, who worked with me on the first mat side project. I saw Faye Dahl earlier. Is Faye still here? Here's Faye in the back. When we got the first mat side designed, we had to get them built, and so Faye was one of the people that came and helped us build them. And if you want some stories about what life was like those days, talk to Faye, and she'll tell you some stories about. It was we built them in the middle of January, and the place we rented to do that, it was so cold we couldn't even get the soldering irons quite warm enough some days. And she'll tell you more about how that all went. So thanks to all the employees that are still with us today and helped us achieve what we've achieved. Thanks to the community, certainly Daktronics. We couldn't do this on an island. The city of Brookings, the state of South Dakota. Special note of thanks to South Dakota State University. Of course, Al and Dwayne were professors when they started the company. We've maintained a strong relationship with the university. It's been really a strategic, critical item for us. We got some of the administration and the faculty here tonight. Thanks for coming. We appreciate all you do for South Dakota. Thanks were some of our suppliers here I saw earlier. Our suppliers are certainly key to us to deliver us quality materials on time every day so we can get our products out to serve our customers. Thanks to our suppliers, thanks to our shareholders. We'll talk more to our shareholders a little later here tonight. And last but not least, thanks to my wife, Dorothy. She's kind of held up the family side of things sometimes while I was traveling, at times somewhat extensively. And she might tell you sometimes when even I was here, I wasn't totally here. So, thanks, dear, for all you've done. And I would like to make a couple introductions here. Our daughter Annie is here with our two grandchildren. Oh, there's Annie over there. And they're back there, and probably into the cupcakes, I imagine. I'm not sure what they're doing. And her husband Dan is here tonight as well. So, yeah, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I really appreciate this, and thanks, for
We have just a couple other people that might come up and say a few words, and we'll start with Nancy Frame. Nancy is on our board of directors, and she acts as the lead director for the independent directors. Here you go, Nancy.
Thank you, Al. It's my great pleasure to be able, on behalf of the Board of Directors, to express our appreciation to both Frank and to Jim. I'll start with you, Frank. 29 years on the Board of Directors. Now that's a record, isn't it? Really, over the years, I've gotten to know Frank and to discover that he's got some marvelous qualities. Among them, things that come to mind is his persistence and his never say no attitude. His ability to identify opportunities and make the most of them when other people didn't even see those opportunities. And of course, his kindness and thoughtfulness. He was the guy who brought the cream, the real cream, for my coffee. I was the only one who drank coffee, but I hated that dry creamer. So Frank brought real cream every day. But these qualities that I've just mentioned obviously are important to his career in sales and trying to satisfy that unhappy customer. He was persistent about it, and that was important. But you know, of all of his qualities, when I think about Frank, the thing I think that's really stands out in my mind is his interest in and ability to mentor and to teach young people that he has recruited to Daktronics. He holds all of Daktronics employees in great respect, and we came to understand that with his stories that he told us at the board meetings about this wonderful team of Daktronics employees and how they turn things around, and also your road sales trips where you took your new recruits, put them under your wing and introduced them to life at Daktronics. And for all of that, Frank, we want to thank you. We know that you're going to be having a good time sitting across the country with Jean at your side, and we're happy for you. But we're also very happy that you're going to continue to recruit those excellent young people that have made this company so strong. So thank you. Thank you. Now, Jim. It's your turn. Gosh, it seems like only yesterday when we were in a transition. Al was stepping down as CEO. Jim was assuming those responsibilities. And I'd be lying to you if I said that the board didn't have a little bit of trepidation about how this transition was going to go. But we didn't worry because, in fact, the transition was flawless. We were wondering, however, whether Al could really step back from the day-to-day operations of this company that he had founded and that he loved so much, and whether Jim could fill these enormous shoes. But, as I said, no problem. I think you discovered that you enjoyed traveling with Irene. Better than coming to the office every day. And Jim, you moved into the role of CEO and filled those shoes with no problem. And in fact, in the ensuing years, led the company to even greater achievements. And so for all of that, Jim, we are so grateful. We want to thank you. I could list all the things that I better not, because there's so many things that were accomplished during your time here. And I think of course, the increased revenues, the expanded plant capacity, manufacturing facilities outside of Brookings, even in China, new products and development of product platforms. The list goes on and on. Oh, new processes, and lean in manufacturing, all of these things you led us in new directions. And of course, our expansion into the international marketplace. So we're very appreciative of all of that. And on behalf of the board, I think one last thing I really want to say is that we've had such a wonderful working relationship with you, Jim. You've always been totally honest, totally forthright, and very receptive to any suggestions or comments, and we appreciate that. We'll miss you, but we're happy that you'll have more time to spend with your family, with your grandchildren, with Jody riding your bike, and we don't have to say goodbye because Jim is going to continue to serve on the board of directors, and so we'll look forward to seeing him every 3 months and to benefiting from his wise judgment, his marvelous, marvelous experience, and so we look forward to that, and we thank you very much for all you've done.
Jeff Robbins, who was our very first sales intern and now serves as our purchasing manager, wants to say a few words here too. I see he's got some props here.
Thanks, Al. I just want to say first, I am talking to Frank, but Jim, thank you for working for you for 33 years of my career, my whole career. Been a great partnership, and I really enjoyed it. So I wanted to say thank you to you first, but I'm here to address Frank. And as Al said, I was the first intern. And I want to say thank you, Frank. And I kind of made some comments in the letter because you really have helped me grow through my career and a lot of things, a lot of memories that we had over the years. And I really appreciate it. And also the internship program that started. There's a lot of management faces in the room now that have gone through that program. And I think it was very successful, and it will still continue to be going forward. I also remember the trips, and the trips that you made to Illinois when I was out there. Sometimes you and Al jump in a car, drive all night to get out there, and we'd start doing business first thing in the morning. And all Frank would have for breakfast was the leftover popcorn that I had on the kitchen table. Of course, Frank ate it all. And that, but the most memorable trip that we talk about, and we still talk about, was my first intern trip to Oregon for the NCAA Division I National Wrestling Championships in 1980. Frank, we had gotten the parcel van loaded up and full of mat sites, and we started heading west, and the things that we had to go through to get out there, and the things we ran into during the trip to Corvallis, Oregon, was we first ran into road closers and ice blockage going over the mountains. And I'll never forget the sign, this parcel van that was in front of us that was doing flip-flops down the road as we were in our big parcel van loaded full of Mansett wrestling scoreboards. I didn't know if we were going to make it over the hill. Then we got down the hill and got into Utah and ran into a real jackrabbit stampede. I'm not talking about the rodeo, I'm talking about thousands of jackrabbits running across the highway in front of us. Yeah. And then we got into in the mountains, and then we were coming down over the hill, and I don't know, is Steve here? Is Steve here tonight? Didn't make it? Okay. But we stopped at a restaurant, and I'd never seen a 12-year-old eat a cherry cobbler as much as Steve did, and got his plate this full, and his stomach got about that full before we were all done with it. Just some memories of the trip. But the one thing for the trip home, and one of the travel things that we had is that it was a rough trip for the three of us. So Frank acquired this chair. And notice on the back of the chair it says OSU. This chair is property of Oregon State University. And I thought, well, I need to get Frank a gift for his departure and his retirement. And I know he's got this humongous travels home, so I thought, well, he could use this chair just like we did between the two driver's seats in the van going out, and sit it right next to the chair in the driver's seat in your travel home. And then I thought, well, I need to do some safety precautions, so I won't take the rope off. But now with the seatbelt laws, I got him some nylon string so he can secure the chair down and he can comply to seatbelt laws. And then the bubble pack is a temporary bed because that's all we slept on during the trip out to Oregon. So with that, Frank, congratulations, and thank you for working with me over the years.
Gary was a manager of our high school scoreboard market for many years, and kind of worked with Frank very closely. And so, Gary Grant.
Okay, thanks for this opportunity. And yes, I met Frank and Al back in 1979 when we started the intern program here at Daktronics. And Jeff was a little bit skinnier back then. And he came into my office at SDSU said he'd like to go in on one of these internships, which meant taking off a semester. That was something new. And he volunteered, and Frank and Al were being educators. I knew they'd love this program, and they've done a heck of a good job over the years. Right? So, Frank, it's been a long ride, and I met them in '79. Then back in '87 in December, Frank saw me out for dinner, invited me to come to a lunch with him and Cal. And they offered me a position out here as to manage the high school park recreation market. I accepted. And it was a good, great 22 years. I retired back in 2010. And Frank, you know, retirement's not all that bad. I don't know when I got time to work before. Anyway, I know we need to keep this short, but I got a few terms here for Frank. Number one is frugal. I remember a time we went to a convention in Orlando, I think, and we didn't stay at the high-risers. I think there was probably a Red Roof Inn or something. And the intern came in late and didn't have a room. Frank volunteered, we'll put you up. We had a 2-bedroom room. Frank pulled off his mattress off the top of his bed, threw it on the floor, and said to the intern, there you can sleep. Frank slept on the spring. So I learned from there that I better be frugal. Another word for Frank is fearless. He taught us all how to work a room, and he didn't like seeing us standing around talking to each other and afraid to go meet people. I'll tell you, I don't think there's anyone in this room probably knows more people than Frank does. All over this country, and I don't know how many men across the oceans, but wherever I went, there was people that knew Frank. And if I went to a convention, is Frank coming? And a lot of respect from our competitors even, and all the athletic directors around the country knew Frank, and they loved to see him. And he was also what I call the energy bunny. He could do a convention all day long on his feet and have a little dinner, and he's ready to go to some sporting event or some reception somewhere. Lots of energy. And like I say, he loved people, and people loved him. Fairness. You know, all the years I worked here, I never got into any kind of disagreements with Frank. I think he treated everyone fairly and with respect. And that says a lot. And I appreciated that. Finally, Frank was my supervisor for many years, but he was also a friend. And I think he was a friend to probably everyone in this room. That's great. Frank, retirement's been great. Congratulations. And Gene's looking forward to it. Jim and Dorothy, congratulations to you. I also met Jim back in 1979. He was a lot younger then. And I appreciate what he's done for the company. So thanks again. Good luck to you all. Have a great retirement.
I think Carla wants to say a few words, so come on up, Carla.
Thank you. Thank you. Stacy's advising me to talk just a little louder. Can you hear me back there? Excellent. I want to say just briefly, thank you to Frank and to Jim. We have a lot of talk about the students and the interns. Frank started our student program. I looked in our system. We've employed more than 1,000 interns over the course of time that Frank has been here. And Frank has volunteered graciously to continue in my group to help us further that program, our relationship with the universities that support us, and our relationship with the students that come here and then hopefully become full-time employees. I'm looking forward to many more than our current 1,000 plus. Jim was my first supervisor 30 years ago, and my last supervisor, currently my supervisor. A fabulous supervisor, absolutely a great mentor, steady person. I always knew I could come to Jim and he would give me a straight answer. Never lost his temper ever in 30 years of my being here. Grew the company, tripled in the size that I was here. Just a fabulous opportunity to work for Jim. I think Jim was our first, or pretty close to our first student employee, which is over and above our interns, and I looked in our system there too, and we've employed 7,000 students since Jim pioneered that for us. Fabulous opportunity for me to work here and to work for Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, Ed, were you going to come up? There's Ed right there. Ed Winiger came to work for us way back in 1970, the summer of 1970, and he was part of the team working under Jim to develop our first product, the wrestling scoreboard.
Thanks, Al. When I first met Jim, Daktronics was down on 614 First Avenue. There's an old picture up here of that. Actually, when I started, that sign wasn't there yet, and I knocked on the door. I wasn't sure where I was at. And Al answered the door. But when I met Jim, he was working on a sphygmomanometer. He was working on his master's thesis, and I was working on a digital thermometer, and also a prototype advantage timer for the wrestling scoreboards. That fall we started working on the mat sides, and we were two young single guys, and we'd work till about midnight or so, or sometimes we could a little earlier than that. Then we'd get on and have a 3-2 beer and go to bed and come back in the morning and start all over again. So we became friends back then, and Jim is really easy to become friends with. He's really has a neat disposition in that regard. So we quickly became friends. We continue to be friends. Our families became very close, and our kids grew up together. And Jim, I just wish you all the joys and blessings that there are available to you in this retirement. So I'm having a good time with it. I'm sure you will too.
Vern also wants to say a few words here. Vern, as Jim mentioned, was our first mechanical engineer, and he not only designed things, but he also set up the manufacturing processes, and occasionally was out there doing it himself.
Yeah, good evening. Congratulations, Frank, and congratulations, Jim. Before I should say, Jim, you said it was quite a trip. And before I talk about a trip that he and I went on, I want to comment something on what Frank said about leaving employees run with the work. And Al hired me just before I graduated in January of 1972, and then he turned me over to Jim, and Jim said, well, can you build workbenches? Sure. And but then when I looked around their shop, they didn't have much for tools. So I asked Jim, well, would it be okay if I just built those workbenches in my garage over Christmas vacation? And that's the way we did. So that kind of supports what Frank said about letting people run the thing. And that's really the way things worked in the early Daktronics days. We were informed of what the job was, and like a bunch of old farm boys, we just got together and did it. We didn't know what we couldn't do, so we did it. But one of the memorial things with Jim that trip I was talking about was to install our first swimming scoreboard in Bloomsburg, Indiana, I think it was, Pennsylvania. And as usual, you know, back in those days, we sold something and then we designed it. And the hours got kind of late, and we had a deadline to meet, and then Ed and Jim were working on the electronics, testing it all out, and I think it was pretty close to 12 o'clock before we got things loaded into the van, because I think when we got to Des Moines, the sun was just coming up. But when there was a job to do, we put in the time to get it done. And Jim was my supervisor for 29 of the 30-some years that I worked for Daktronics, and I want to thank you for all the help you give me and the opportunities you gave me, Jim. And I wish you all luck in the world, and don't forget that coffee at 10 o'clock in the morning that I invited you to.
Thank you, Brad. I think Brad Weidman wants to say a few words. Come on up, Brad.
Thanks, Al. I'm here to talk about Jim, but I could say a lot about Frank as well. What about Jim? You know, I came back to Daktronics in December of 1993, so it was the year before Daktronics went to the open market, to the public, became public under EAKT. And boy, I remember the years prior to that. I worked for Daktronics back in the early 80s, and we were running pretty hard at that time, but from 94 on, it seems like it's just been a blink. It's been going really, really fast, and it's been a lot of fun. But I've reported to Jim all those years, and it's been a privilege. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to work with Jim. A lot of good things have been said about his steadfastness, trusting others, allowing them to do their job. A lot of hands off. Go out, get it done, figure it out. You always wanted to work extra special hard for Jim. You never wanted to fail. And so success was the only way to really go forward. I was speaking to Brian Iwerks right before coming up here, and Jim hired Brian as well back at that same time. Brian has been reporting to me since that first day. And I asked him what he remembered, and he just, he kind of commented, I'm pretty thankful that Jim just took a risk on me. And I think that could be said about a lot of us in here, that Jim did take a lot of risk on us. He really did. Maybe not as much as he knows he did. But he took a lot of risk, and we're very grateful for that. I'm very thankful to have worked with Jim for all these years. He's been a super mentor, outstanding. And now he gets to go into retirement and set the example for the rest of us, so I'm looking forward to see how you handle that. So I have a model to follow there. So appreciate everything, Jim, and congratulations.
I think Reese wants to say a couple words, and so Reese is coming up here.
Thank you. I'm here to make a few comments about Jim and Frank. I would say that a lot has been said, so I won't take too much time, but I believe every leader leaves a legacy. We heard a lot about Frank with the intern program, and I would add maybe the scoreboard sales and service with Gary. They brought that up from the ground up. I think that's still a big part of Daktronics today. As Brad and Carl, I worked for many years with Jim, and there's a long history of different challenges that we overcame. Large years where we had tremendous growth, and we had to try to swallow that, included the manufacturing plants, and ship things out and try to build them, and it was really challenging. And I think with Jim in mid-2000s there, we said we needed to change this, and we needed to do things different. He led us into this new way of thinking called lean. Started in our manufacturing area, moved to our engineering and on to our other processes, and I really think that'll continue to pay dividends on into the future. So appreciate all that. I will say if you've ever worked with Jim, he is a lean guy, so lean is a double meetings. And when you travel with Jim, food isn't high on his priority. So, a little recommendation when you're traveling with Jim is retirement. You need to hunt and forage on your own. Plan your breakfast, your dinner. Thanks again for everything you guys have done. We're just doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, Frank's son Steve just arrived. He was not terribly late, so maybe you want to step out and put your hand up, Steve. And this really concludes our program. Feel free to grab some snackies, and as we move towards 7 o'clock, you need to head down this hallway right here in our meeting room for our annual shareholders meeting. It's just down there to the right. So we'll assemble about 5 minutes to 7 or 10 minutes to 7, and we'll start the meeting on time. Thank you all very much. So just feel free to wander around, visit, and enjoy yourself for a couple minutes.